It's language and communication skills for social sciences for the sake of the camera. Today we wanted us to look something, talk about the word what you are saying. I do believe that if somebody can be asked to just take a guess what it could be about, if you are good at getting guesses, you could be correct because there is the graphic process. So if we know what graphics are, right? If you remember, we talked about graphics, and usually we talked about graphics as being uh, those. We could just talk about like their. I wanted to say images, right? But they, if it's their images, but we talked about two of them, and when we talk about two of them, we make a distinction between the two types, and whereby whatever we talked about, we know that it's something that we can see, and it's communicating a specific message, and usually it's something that can be manipulated. Um, and when we think about those graphics are also maybe one of the characteristics that is standing out. They are created by people, right? So just because they are created, it means there has to be a process of creating graphics. When you have all these graphics that you see, they don't just come up from the blues, right? Someone has to sit down and decide to create them the way you see them. A lot of vector graphics that we see, like from mathematics books, from billboards, and a lot of bitmap or raster that you see from advertisements. But whatever the manipulation is, uh, the color that somebody decided to use, because you discover that the graphics that you are going to see, they will not have the same font or typeface. They will be having different typefaces. Why do they have different typefaces? There's a reason, right? They will have different colors. Some will be colorless, some will have color, some will have one color, which is like what is called the monochrome. Some will have two colors. So they have different colors. And even the sizes, they are different of different sizes. Some they are huge, some they are small, right? So for someone to come up with something like that, there should be some kind of principles that should determine the decision to say this is going to be like this. So that's what we wanted to talk about in the graphic process. Like what process is it there, or the process that is going to be undertaken in order to produce these graphics, right? So in the graphic process, we have these four steps that have been formulated, right? Or have been made, that if you can uh, go through these steps or stages, surely you should be able to have a graphic material that is going to be effective, because the whole aim of creating a graphic, there is a reason why you are creating is you want to communicate. So it's not a matter of just creating them for nothing. So there's these stages, as you can see there, formulation of design policy, right, as the first one, which is important to say, when you are designing, there should be a policy, or the or whoever is going to be involved to design, to follow. And when you say design policy, what do we mean, right? I think we talk about that. The determination of typography, the orientation of designers and some editors, and execution and the evaluation of design policy, right? So something like that. And the graphic process, it involves the procedures or practice by which graphic designs are created for effective communication, as I've said. And for you to be a successful designer, you need to have a certain kind of a specific policy that to follow. And also, as we already say that you should know exactly who you are going to address, because all these graphic materials that are going to be created are going to be targeting a specific audience somewhere, right? So there should be the policy that is considering the audience of that particular creation, right? So if you have got that in mind, whatever design you are trying to design, okay? And I'm saying design, sometimes when you talk about design, some will say, I think this is not our field. We are not designers. What we're talking about, as long as if you have been on the Word document, you can design something on the Word document, even the basic material. Some of you can even say, okay, a wedding card, invitation card, you can do that, right? So as a communicator, you need to know what elements are needed. And as I say, sometimes in your field, you are not going only to be, let me say, reporters, because there's this conception to say journalism reporters. But now, if you go into journalism and now see what the content, you discover that there are a lot of areas where you can fit in, right? So on this element, it's not a matter of you being the actual designer. You can be an instructor. Someone is a designer, and you direct the person what to do. You are not supposed to do this. You are supposed to do. And if you go into these fields, you discover that a person who is designing and a person who is just managing them, the one who is managing them could be getting more salary than the one who is actually designing. And you will say, no, but this one is the one who is doing the job. That's what happens in this field, because that is like a managerial level. So this managerial level, it needs knowledge like this. Somebody could know how to manipulate graphics, but doesn't have knowledge to say this. I've seen people before whereby they show me this. Do you see what I've created? A very colorful design. But when you look at it and think about communication, you discover that this graphic would confuse people. What are you communicating here? Do you see this? Do you see elements that if somebody look at it, you say it's beautiful, but the message cannot go straight to you're going to confuse somebody, because it's going to be a lot of elements. So if you know at least what is needed, it means you're going to even tell, no, you're not supposed to do this. First of all, start by this. So this is what it's all about. So formulation of a design policy. Now, what are we talking about when they say design policy? A design policy, as you can see, is something, or it's a specific approach or a guide, right? That is going to to tell you, okay, what to put in, what not to put in, what elements are supposed to be there. So, as a designer, you need to have a design policy, which means you don't have to be thinking about if you are going to be, if you are being assigned to do a certain graphic design. You are not supposed to all the time start thinking to say, okay, how can I approach this? And the example is newspapers. If you go to newspaper like Nation, BNL, they have got what is called a house style, right? A house style It's more or less like a design policy, right? When they say die house, they know that according to our style, we don't put this, we don't put this. When you are writing something or when you are designing, you know what is supposed to be there, even if the font, right? Why do they have the house style? Because they have an audience that they know. Okay. Designers and the sub editors, because as you see here, you can be a designer. Like I can give an example of, I do believe you know BNL, right? BNL that produces Malawi News, Daily Times, Sunday Times. They are as a let's say as a media house, they have got these sections, right? They have a section which is the newsroom. Newsroom is where we are going to have let's say nowadays with the social media, like content, you say content creators, they say that, but you don't create content. But we have good journalists, let me say, who collect, gather news, write news. And now you have got a section which is the production. The production is where there are now people who are physically taking the information, printing on the newspaper. That's another section. So you have got a section. Another one is marketing. Marketing is anything with advertising and marketing and distribution. But now newsroom is connected with the designing. Designing is a separate place. Like there's a newsroom, like a room like this. Then where they design the newspaper, you go a few blocks, and then there's a room with computers, with people there. So what the designers do usually, they don't usually decide what is going to be on the newspaper. What they do, the newsroom will just bring content, right? And they just place the content where it's supposed to be placed. Now, that's why here you're going to see talking about sub-editors, because when you go to a media house like that one, the decisions to do with the designing, they are done by sub-editors. When you say sub-editors, it could be even an editor, right? So I do believe when you say editor, you know what we're talking about. Editor, if you have got a newsroom with reporters, they do report it to the editor. Editor is the one who assigns the assignments, who control what are called the desks, right? So that person is like the way you are, whereby you just have knowledge. So this is what we're talking about. And so they need to have this policy in hand. So first of all, what you need to do to have this policy at the beginning is because you are targeting a specific audience. So you have to analyze your audience, right? First of all, define your audience. You should define what is your audience. So why is it important? We talked about font, and we said the font we're talking about, we might have typeface, which is a small font, sometimes large font. But now, if you're talking about, if you think you've seen them before, elder people. Elder people, most of them, they have got a problem of sight, right? Whereby if they want to read even the Bible, they have to take glasses, right? What does it mean? If your audience is the elder people, it means your policy would be font should not, no one should use this small font, right? Because your audience is made up of the people who cannot see small characters, right? So that could be a policy. So if they can be designers, they will know, oh, according to this is the story. Can you, or this is the information, can you put it here? Immediately, you will decide to take a larger font because of that. If you have got a youthful target, it means the size of the font will not matter, right? You could decide to say, okay, we can even put small font. These are young people; they can see, right? What we will, right? So that could be a policy, which is important because, you are addressing it to a specific audience, And this is just the beginning. You are going to analyze your audience first. This is one of the area whereby to see which demography are they belong, do they belong, right? So here, as I talk about it, that you have to define your audience. It's more or less like you are doing research to say, okay, I mean, this we are told that the people of area 15 are going to be the one maybe reading this. So you will go to area 15 and do a survey to find out, I mean, what type of or the demography. Is it made up of maybe it's young people, older people, right? So here, as I say, define your audience can be achieved in several ways, right? The demographic way and the income approaches, right? Whereby demographic way, it means you are checking the makeup of the ages of the people. I mean, what age groups are your audience? The income approach, it means their wealth. Is it a makeup of low income people or middle income people, right? So that could be one approach. And also, there is this approach, say, the way of trying to uh, analyze your audience. There's this this particular term called the psychographic approach, which is like more or less like you are trying to analyze the demography. But what you are doing, you don't look at one aspect. You look into so many aspects. As you can see, you check out their lifestyles, you look at, you observe their behavior, their opinions, their activities, cultural values, expectations, right? The profile of the loyalty of your audience. So it's like you're trying to study, right, your audience in so many ways. So, I mean, this is a stage before you create, because the problem is if you are mandated to create a particular graphic material or or image or communication graphic material, if you don't do research, it will not achieve its purpose, because this can help you to go directly, and this information would be important because you might be employed into a company, an advertising company. So they could say they would like to have a design, maybe advertisement design for a specific community. So if you are able to do research and find out this, you could be specific, right? And you could avoid some other elements that you could distract maybe the information gathering or getting. So that's why I say that what you're doing is like you're doing the behavioral segmentation, right? You're trying to find out, okay, maybe there's different groups in the area. Maybe one group does this, one other group does this, because you can't just assume that we have got one category. It's exactly as the music. You can have the same people. Some will like a particular type of music, some will not. But you can't assume that, oh, because this is from Malawi, everybody likes it. No. So you have to make that research. So here, as I say, that in the formulation of design, you start by defining your audience. Then you go to find out the profile of visual literacy of your audience. So when you say visual literacy, um, Yeah, visual literacy is said that it involves the ability of your audience to decode graphics, right? You're going to be creating different graphics. So now, for example, in town here, we see a lot of different types of graphics per day on the social media, in the newspaper. So because we usually see them, some graphics, we don't have to struggle to know what they're talking about or what they need, right? Because we usually see them. But if you take some of the people from the village that they don't usually see those graphics, you show them, they will not know what it means, right? So you have to explain, no, this means this. So that's what we're talking about. Whereby you might be, okay, you're working in an NGO, so you're being told, can you create graphics for this village? Then you are creating graphics, showing that maybe these graphics are going to be in the town. So it's going to be a problem. Right, so that's what we are talking about. And also that one is at the same time issues to do with color, right? And anything related to graphics, color, the font, and all those elements that make up a graphic, right? So how well is your audience in terms of understand or interpret or interpreting the graphics, right? So and this one they say that if you are a creator, it is you are assuming that you are visually literate, right? You know, and you are assuming that these people they don't. So you want to find out what level they are. So some they might be, oh, at least a lot of them they are okay. Maybe some they are not, but it's an important step because it will help you to be direct uh, in terms of what you want to create. Like I give an example, like even in Malawi, you can have even specific colors. I should be given here, you already know. If you can have, let's say, there is a certain advert with a lot of blacks and red. What are the people going to say? Deep black, deep red. Someone is going to say satanic. That's what you say. Why are you calling it satanic? I know they say satanic, I know, but they're talking about the same thing. You associate these colors to something, right? So imagine you are designing a wedding card and then the colors are just black and red. What are the people going to say? Background black, the letters red, and you say it's a wedding card invitation. People are going to talk about it. So that's an example, right? So there are specific colors. You need to know that, okay, my audience, these particular colors, what do they associate these colors with? Okay, these colors they are associated with wedding. These colors they are associated with maybe vegetation. Okay, so if you are aware, you are going to be careful in what the colors you use, right, and the light. Okay, I think this is now. Then determination of typography. So at this stage, first of all, you have defined your audience. Then you have check their ability to read graphics. Then it's a stage whereby you have to determine now, right? You say which, let me say, characters are you going to use? Fonts, because you know them. Okay, what are you going to use? Because you know. So usually, you see, you'll be selecting if it's in terms of like here, you're dealing with the type, right? The type you are going to be selecting, if it's going to be like communication as just communication, you are going to be looking at these three elements, right? Legibility, readability, communication, right? Let me just say, maybe the best, just say, if you think about readability, right? And communication, well, those are the major ones, right? Is this font or type, a font type, is it readable? You can somebody easily read this. Okay, is it good to send this particular message we are trying to send, right? So that's what you're going to think about, right? And I know that, as I said, that we see these fonts, most of them we just pass them, right? You say, Word document, I'm writing an assignment. You usually just go Romans new, right? You don't think about other fonts. Why do you just go past them? There are so many of them. But sometimes try to go to the unknown fonts. You discover some of them are even difficult when you place them. They are too small, some they are too big, some they are too far apart. So there are elements that can make somebody have a problem to read them, right? Or they can end up confusing your readers, right? So that's what you decide to say, okay, let me use this, let me use that. But now, the bottom line is it will depend on the message, the kind of message. Because what we need to know, all those fonts we see, there is a situation and a context that they might be used. So you might be needing them sometimes according to the message you want to send. Because sometimes people think like these other phones are not useful. They might be useful sometimes. Yeah, because some are just there for beauty, some they are just for artistic purposes. So if you are designing something artistic, you need those artistic fonts to use, right? Determination of typography. Again, what else? Here you should see typography should not be done only from the point of your audience, right? The types that you select, because the thing is, we can see that we are relating to our audience all the time. But for graphic designers, they say you need to know, like even we I don't know that part if I share that part. I think you have seen them. You have ever went somewhere to print something, right? And you see someone going on the computer and try to change some settings. Maybe you have seen that, right? Why? Because some other folks they look good in the computer, but if you print them out, they don't appear good. There's a specific problem with maybe some printers, right? So determination of type should also be according, regarding to the printability or the printing process, right? That these fonts okay. If you use this for printing, are they going to come out okay, right? So if you have got that knowledge, that to say there this, I know that people say, how do you know, right? We are in the information age. Information age, we have got to Google, right? Some of the things that you don't know, you say we don't know this. I don't know. Why? When you go to Google, what do you search? You search for music, you search for series or for specific movies. You never search about what you say you don't know, right? So when you go there, try to search for what you say you don't know. You discover that the information is coming up. So if you are going to search to say, what are the fonts that are, easily compatible with printing? Go search on Google. They're going to show you that these particular fonts, they are, well compatible with printing. So if you are deciding maybe your type, You are going to select such kind, because there are some whereby they are going to appear good, okay here. You print them out, you discover that all the A4 size, they are showing, they are appearing very big, or maybe they are being cut this side, or maybe some they are a certain format that is complicated, right? With printing. So that's what we're talking about. That apart from thinking about the audience, when you are selecting the type, you should also consider upon the printing, right? Because that is also an important element of the whole process. That whatever you're going to design, they should be printed out somewhere else, and they should it's supposed to come out uh, in the okay. Because there's some fonts, they will not maybe be tolerating specific medium. Some they're going to have problems with specific printers or something like that. What else here? Okay. Then orientation of designers and some editors, right? So uh, you have decided, like here, you have determined the typography, the type you want. Now you have to orient the designers and some editors, right? When you say orient, uh, that's a policy that you are making, right? So now you have to tell them, okay, we have decided that according to the audience that we have, we are going to be using this type, right? This type of font. And also, we are going to be using this type of color or this. So, some editors should know, designers should also know, right, about it. And it's important because they say, as I said, that some people are going to be fired, to get fired in companies because of policy issues. Maybe you've heard about it. That they were not following the policy, company's policy. For example, here, if you can ask the management at this place, what are the policies of Unireal? They're going to give you. There are specific policies. If you go against those policies, you might be even expelled. So that's the thing. So as a designer, you have what you are going to be designing for specific audiences. It means you have analyzed them. You know what graphics style formats are relevant for those audience. If somebody come and alter that, for example, you're spending money. So someone decide to use different font, decide to use. What is going to happen is the information is not going to be communicated well. You're going to spend money, waste money, let me just say. So a person could be critical, could be really fired because of that. So that's why I say this stage is important. Because if you go to other places, if you are working with other people, and then you don't tell them which is specific, what is the policy for your design, there could be a problem, right? Sure. Yeah. Kankanira limena bange bene. Ndakwinjiga bena bange koni. This is room 1. Okay. Right. Okay. Oh. Right. So that's the 4th stage. That you have Orient, the graphic designers, the sub editors. Now it's a last stage is the execution and evaluation of the policy, right? Execution of design policy is the last stage of the design process, right? And this is whereby, I mean, it's just now you apply. You know what is supposed to be done, how it's supposed to be done. You see? So what is said here is said, uh, this stage is whereby you'll be dealing with the text, color, and also if you remember typography. If some of you were not around last class, check the slides. We talked about some other important elements like space, right? Space is important in designing. You are able to read this easily because of those spaces you are seeing. So there is a way of manipulation of space. I think if you check this last slides, you check leading, kerning, right? Leading, kerning, and what else? There's kerning, there's leading, and there's what? Those are the ways of dealing with space. So if you didn't check the last slides, so space is important. Like I'm talking about white space. Those white spaces you are seeing, right? So there are ways whereby you might have a white space between a word. So there's a way of how to deal with it, how to remove white spaces between a word, how to minimize spaces between lines, right? So if you check kerning, leading, and the other one is what I think I wanted to see if you did read, but since you didn't check. So at the same time, at this stage is whereby you also evaluate because you have gone through the process. Now, evaluation is to see, okay, after the policies, after what you have done, is it working, right? Because if something is not working, you have to, I mean, revise in one or two areas. But now, since it's the last stage, right? So, okay, so as we can see here, we started by here, talking about the graphic process, whereby we have these four stages, like formulation of design policy at the beginning, the now determination of typography, that okay, what type are you going to be using depending on the audience, and then orienting the designers and some editors, and then finishing with execution and evaluation, right? So execution is now the actual process now of creating it, doing everything, the manipulations of spaces, color, and all what you can do with it, right? So the target audience of graphics is crucial, as that will determine the course of that policy, right? So that's why I say that you don't just design, right? You have some other designers who design their materials without thinking about the audience. So you are going to design something for you, but the audiences will say, it doesn't look good, so there's no work done, right? So something like that. At this point, I didn't even check my phone. I've switched it off. Or what's the time? Because I know that it should be half of the time. I don't think it's beyond. There was a small part I wanted to finish with. What's the time now? I know I don't want to. Oh yeah. Oh, it's showing. It's showing it. It's what? Oh, it's showing here. It's showing it. I'm seeing it here. Okay. Yeah, it's like I'm not going to use the whole 1 hour, right? I'll use part of it. But from what I've talked about to this point, any question? any question or questions, because maybe we can clarify one or two places. But is it understood? We know what we're talking about, eh? I don't think this is complicated, because if you're saying this is complicated, then nothing is going to be simple. Because this will be one of the easiest, eh? Straightforward. Eh? How materials they appear simple? How do they appear simple? You should be able to relate them to real life, right? That's a simple thing. You say, what in real life? What are they talking about? Oh, are they designing? Designing like what? Or like a magazine? So, oh my God. So that's what you're talking about. You know, when you're thinking about it, when do you sit with, they were talking about something we don't know, right? So, yes. What is the meaning of the book? The what? The meaning of what? Okay. See, that's why I started. Well, the question I started at the beginning. Yeah? Did you, were you there the first classes? Did you get the slides? I said on WhatsApp. Did you go through them? You didn't. Because that's what I asked. Eh? When I came here, I said, did you went through the materials I've shared? Because the materials I shared, one of them is where the typography lesson starts. So it starts with defining typography. No, not just, I know, as I said, that most of the terms, you don't have one definition. You might have different definitions, but some might be shorter, some might be easier. Okay, for you to just to sum up, there was something I wanted to talk about, just to end up, about the basic principles of typography, the same thing. So since you have asked it, this is the definition of typography. The first one you are saying there, at least it's making sense. Typography is the art and technique of arranging type to make written language legible, readable, and appealing. I don't know if this one is, because as I said, some definitions they will be broader, some will be shorter. They might talk about the same thing, they might be correct, but some basic word content. So I think this is much more close to the whole thing, right? Because it's to do with type. That's why we talked about some fonts, typefaces, because this is communication graphics. So since we defined it, we said you could palema vector graphics, the palema raster graphics. Raster is like the photograph, which is bitmap. Now, vector, the type, this is vector. Differences, how do you know the differences? Raster, ukaipanga enlarge, imaluza quality. It's like a photograph. Photo ikakati kama pixels zake tangono, when you enlarge it, umaja kudadi ikusita, isiko nikabude. Raster, I mean vector like this ones. Utai kulisa times 1000, sisita quality. Because this one is not made by dots, even it's made by lines. So it's not an image. So because it's not an image, people could say, I want to have a very a graphic material that is of high quality, which is not an image. So you could just use shapes, lines. So somebody could draw a person using just lines. You can draw a pen. But now if it's going to be using my vector like this, it means the quality will not change. So since type is part of graphics, typography is we are now like taking type as a form of graphics, which is to communicate messages. So typography is to do with, I think as you can see the definition here. It's the art and the technique of arranging type. It's just a matter of arranging the type and make written language. And I think maybe here you can even say about for the arranging, it's even manipulating, because you also manipulate it, make it large, make it small, make it in a certain way, right? But what you are doing, It's either you're making language legible, readable, appealing, or you're trying to communicate something. But usually, because type, it communicates language, right? That's why it's to do with language, right? So it's, I think you can make up your definition out of it. But it's the word itself, typography, it will almost tell us that is the element of graphics and the type, right? But what you are doing is, in this typography, what they do is you are trying to use type as a form of communication graphics. So you are finding the best way that you can use type to communicate. That's what you are doing. That's why we are talking about all these principles or maybe type of graphics. We try to understand them, and as I say, how to best we can use them to communicate. Because we don't just take element characters as if they are characters for nothing. That's why we make sure that we know that the aim of all these characters is communication, right? So maybe in that one you can even come up with uh, your own definition, but it's about that. That's why if your definition, you said it shortly, but you are correct, right? Maybe because you just short, yeah. But that's what we're talking about. I know that the way I've been talking about, if you didn't maybe attend the last class, you couldn't not even and get it exactly. But I think by now you should know what we're talking about, right? So all these text the process that they use in newspaper, magazine, to decide to say article E, to use a font E, to use a type, color ish, to use a size E, although that the process of doing that is what we are involved in, what is involved in typography. The aim is to achieve the purpose of whoever is designing. For whoever is designing, there's a purpose. That's what we're going also to see here, in terms of these basic principles. To say how are we, what are some other principles that can guide you, right? In terms of thinking about typography, right? And here talk about, see here, and you start with what we're talking about, purpose. You want to communicate using type, the purpose is number one. The same type, if you are communicating it for something, could be okay. The same one, if you can communicate it, I give an example. For example, if you talk about the red and black, I said, for some, when they see red and black, it's something that you cannot relate to a good message, right? So there can be a message that is not a good message. Maybe it's a bad message. So if it's going to use black and red, it's going to be appropriate. Because that was the purpose. Because you want to show the people that this message is not a good message. Like we talked about, I think we have said alert, whereby they say, they talked about, I think, warning or something, whereby they use red type. When they say, oh, danger, have you ever thought about it? Why when they say danger, they put red? Or even on it's just an example of, or I mean, traffic lights. When they say red, people associate it with this danger something. Green is something, okay? Yellow, orange is something. So those are what we're talking about. So if you like to get involved with typography, this is now we have talked about the one we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about I mean our topic here. Let's just go. Okay, in here we are talking about actual graphics now, right? As a design, right? To say we are taking this particular text as just like it's a graphic material. So it's different to say you are using, they say graphic communication or graphic. communication graphic, if you are thinking about it to communicate, like as a communication graphic, it's how best or how best to or the process of communicating, how maybe let me say maybe the placement, where can you place it, right? But if you say the graphic process, we're not concerned with where to place it, no, or in other areas. We are just focused in this one. We are thinking about you want to create it, right? That's what you are thinking. But now, what the typography is now, you want to make a choice, like the one of the point we talk about, like when you say determination of typography. Yes, that's what we're talking about. Whereby it's a matter of you are trying to make a choice to say which particular maybe font can I use. So maybe this part I'm talking about, the last one, which is about the principles, would fit more with that point of determining typography, right? Whereby we are talking about what will determine, what will make you decide that one. So the purpose and the tone of your communication, right? So it's got to be like you talk about. You should select a font that matches the mood, right? The mood of your message. You know the message. What is the mood of the message? Is it a happy message? Okay, if it's a happy message, that's a mood. And the message content, what is it? What is inside the message, right? Is it appropriate for your audience? What context, right? So this can help you to say, okay, it is a happy mood, then you know that because it's a happy mood, let's choose this. I think you have seen when they talk about Christmas, they don't just use ordinary fonts like this. They'll be using those handwriting type, whereby they look more colorful, right? So then you think about the message of your content. Okay, what are they communicating? Okay, is it just a short message or whatever? Maybe is it a message that you need them to pay attention more? Then you decide, and then you see that. So shortly, the purpose and the tone of your communication is one. Then the size of your text is another, right? Why? Size of your text. I think at this point, if you think about what we were talking about earlier, this one will fit with the first point we talked about, whereby we say we have to define our audience, right? So that point, we are saying if you are going to have older audience, the elders, you decide to say let's use bigger fonts, right? It's younger audience, smaller font. So that's one of the principles that can guide you to select a specific font to say, okay, size matters. Because sometimes we don't think about the size of the font, but no wonder those fonts that you see in your Word document, they are different sizes, right? Or the font, right? So also the context, because if it's going to be used for headlines, newspaper headlines, do you see small fonts like this or do you newspaper headlines? You find a bigger font, So the context, because it's a newspaper headline, you have to, I mean, you want a bigger font, right? So sometimes you don't have to manipulate it, you just have to take a font that is big already, if you want, right? So that's another one. Then the spacing between your letters or words and the lines. So how do you know this? Go to your fonts in your Word document. You discover they have got different spacings. Like this one, what we are saying, if I can try to change to go into another font, you see the spaces will be different. So some spaces are okay for a message, some they are not, right? So you remember I talked about that, we talked about spaces in the last session, and I said that there are three main types of spacing, right, that you need to use, to pay attention to. So these are three types: kerning, tracking, and leading, right? So you need to check them out. Kerning is adjustment of the space between individual letters, right? You can have a letter you're going to be the size, pakati pali space. You know, the space. So what you're going to do, you'll be looking into your text. Oh, there's a space there. You'll be removing those spaces, unnecessary spaces. If you're going to be doing that, what you're doing is you are undergoing a process of kerning, right? Then you have tracking, adjustment of spaces between groups of letters or words, right? You could have not just one word like that. For one word is kerning, but you can have a number of words. And after a number of words, there's a space gap like or something. And then you have leading, which is now you are dealing with the adjusting the spaces between lines of text, right? So you need to see that. And the last one, style and the formatting of your text. The style and formatting of your text can affect the meaning and emphasis of your text as well, right? When you say style, if you check I'm just referring to the Word document because you usually use it. You have some other graphic softwares whereby you have got different fonts. If you are dealing with graphics, I believe that if you have got your laptop, you can have Adobe InDesign. You can have Adobe. Is it what do you call this? Adobe what? The other one. There's this other one which is closer to InDesign. What? No, not Photoshop. I think I'm learning for Photoshop because Photoshop usually but I know it's yeah, as you are saying, the modern Photoshop is like it's InDesign, eh? Yeah, but Photoshop again, but there's also another one. This one, what you call I think the name will just run away. Not Lightroom, but there's another one which is it sounds closer to as if it sounds closer to Acrobat Reader like, but it's not Acrobat Reader. It's and I do have it in my computer here. I think I'll check it out. I have it. Right? Okay. Yeah, but that one also you can see different type of fonts, and you can also check fonts on the internet. People they do create fonts. I say that we take it for granted because we have this Word document Word, which we usually we didn't buy. Right? If we install it, we just got it for free from somebody who clicked it. Eh? But usually the Word software packages they are sold, and if they are sold, maybe now it should be. Maybe 500,000 it would be. Suppose it was 100,000 at the time, but usually we just share. So I would say, if you can have these typefaces that are sold online, they are not cheap. At first I thought they were cheap. They are not. New typeface you can find one character, something like $80. One character, just T. Then the whole package. I saw somebody the whole package was saying like $700 something. Like it's like you're going to have like A, B, C, D, E to X, Y, whatever, but with a font that is not found in the Word document. Somebody created that. So people that are making money online, creating fonts, selling them, right? So some will just buy 3 characters. 3 characters, it means $80 times 3. They will pay. So it's a business, right? So it's not that cheap, I know. But we are talking about, if you check all those fonts, some of them you discover they are underlined, some they are lowercase. But this is what we're talking about, right? The style. Style is like, it's just, you can have the same one, it's italic, slanting. That's a style. So, this is one of the elements that you choose it because you say, I want a character that is in italic. Or maybe that is bold. If you can check on your Word document, there are some characters that are originally bold. You don't need to make them bold. You'll be writing their all body characters. You don't have to say, I write the body. No. So if you say, I want to write an article with body characters, so I don't have to highlight to make the body. I just want a character which is already body. So then you go, you decide that one. So that's a decision whereby you're going to select it because of the style or for the formatting of your text. So that's what I'm talking about. So this is just the end. The part I wanted to talk about. These slides, we're going to see them, but the main area I want to talk about today is the one we started by.